Carl Benz, the man who invented the car, probably didn't know it at the time that his invention would not just be a means of transportation, but also a cultural phenomenon. From movies and video games to car tuning and racers, cars have evolved to be a consistent part of pop culture. It is because of this that fascinating stories come about, whether it be from making or racing some of these vehicles. The Midnight Club. The Midnight Club was a gang of illegal street racers who came to fame through their incredible high-speed street races in Japan. The club was founded in 1987, and they instilled a strong ethics code to avoid putting members and citizens in danger. In order to join the club, your car had to have a top speed of at least 160 miles per hour or 250 kilometers per hour. If you did manage to join the club with a 160 mile per hour top speed car, however, you would still be at the rear end of their racing formations because the club was known for sustaining speeds of over 190 miles per hour or 300 kilometers per hour. The main route they would take would be along the Wangan Highway that connects Tokyo and Yokohama. And while they were a headache to deal with for local police, they still had accumulated a cultural respect and appreciation amongst locals. Common cars in the club would include some of Japan's most well-known sports cars like the Nissan 300ZX, the Nissan GTR, and the Toyota Supra. They also had a few Italian sports cars like the Lamborghini Countach and the Ferrari Testarossa. Any early members who were still in their first year were considered apprentices, and only 10% of those apprentices actually became full-fledged club members. Unfortunately, the club came to a grim end, however, when multiple members of the Midnight Club got into a dangerous race with members of a biker gang. Both members of the Midnight Club and the biker gang had died, as well as nearby civilians. Because this was against the club's ethics code, the leader saw to it that the club was immediately terminated. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the video so far, please leave a like. Winning races by drug smuggling. Randy Lanier had an interest in racing in the 1970s, and he had the goal of obtaining a competition license. In 1982, a driver for a Ferrari driving for the North American racing team, who was racing in the 24-hour Daytona endurance races, became sick, and Randy Lanier became a substitute driver. This was considered his first real experience, and the following year he got invited back at the same race, in which he got second place in. After that, he had fully realized his passion for racing. Later, Lanier and his brother formed their own racing team called the Blue Thunder Racing in 1984. They began winning multiple races at places like the Watkins Glen International and the Laguna Seca Raceway. The Blue Thunder Racing team was winning without any sponsors on an operation costing around $750,000 a year. In 1986, the same year that Lanier was declared the Rookie of the Year at the Indy 500, his brothers were receiving charges of importing drugs and tax fraud. It eventually caught up to Lanier as he pled guilty and admitted that all the way back up to 1974, he had began a drug smuggling operation. Lanier started off transporting around 700 pounds of marijuana on his own. Later, the operation grew to over 150 people and over 100,000 pounds of marijuana transported. The operation was estimated to earn around $73 million a year at its height. And just a reminder, the Blue Thunder Racing team was only running on a $750,000 budget a year. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 15 years. He is now out of prison and seems to have a new perspective. James Dean and the Porsche 550 Spider. James Dean was an American actor and cultural icon who came to fame in the 50s. He would soon be starring in his most iconic movie role, Rebel Without a Cause. For the movie, he acquired a Porsche 550 Spider, and the car was customized by George Barris, who made multiple Hollywood cars, including the Batmobile. The 550 Spider that James Dean acquired was nicknamed the Little Bastard, and it had its name painted on the car. In a conversation that Dean had with Alec Guinness, otherwise known as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Guinness had called the car sinister looking, and Dean responded by saying that if you get inside this car, you'll be dead by this time next week. After that, Dean ended up dying inside the Little Bastard in a car crash a week later. Afterwards, the car began accumulating a reputation of being cursed, with even some of its parts being scrapped from the Little Bastard, causing crashes inside other cars. George Barris bought the remains of the Little Bastard, and with the California Highway Patrol, they put it on an exhibit. Strangely, the exhibit ended up burning down, with the car left intact. On a transport to a second exhibit, it also somehow ended up falling off of the lift and killing the driver transporting it. Finally, the car was just sent back to George Barris one more time, but on the way back to him it had disappeared. Whether it was stolen or not, its whereabouts are still unknown. John Z DeLorean. The visionary for the DeLorean originally worked at General Motors, but he had a vision for a sportier, more future and forward-looking car. Before the DeLorean, he had an idea for a fast, small car. General Motors didn't like the idea of a large engine in a small car though, so John had to convince them by explaining that it was for a Hollywood movie. The car ended up being a great success and had become an add-on package for the Pontiac Tempest, making it the Tempest GTO. They sold over 32,000 models in their first year due to its popularity. After John had reached some success, his critical view of General Motors only grew, calling the quality of their cars low and claiming that it was only hurting their profits. Their disagreements eventually led to John resigning. Eventually, the concept of the DeLorean came out, and investors loved it, but he still needed to raise more money if he was going to bring the car to production. After he was finally able to bring the car to production, it obviously became very famous due to its role in the Back to the Future movies. In actuality though, the car was underwhelming, with underpowered performance and average handling. After the DeLorean company tanked, DeLorean planned to buy 220 pounds of cocaine, worth $24 million. He wanted to do this to help bring his company back afloat. While there was no indication that he actually had the money, it turns out that he was unknowingly a part of a sting operation that the FBI had set up. It was all caught on video, and John ended up being prosecuted for an attempt to buy cocaine, as well as embezzlement and fraud. He eventually went bankrupt. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed any of this, please leave a like. If you like content like this, consider subscribing. I'll be posting more content soon, so stay tuned for that. Thanks guys.